Well, there it is, all nice and pretty and shiny, and nothing wrong with it. Well, there was there wasn't anything physically wrong with it, but guy at the radiator shop said the core was pretty much plugged. He said when he boiled it, he got a lot of nasty crap out of it. So that was part of the overheating issue right there, was that the radiator was plugged, and he said it was plugged inside and out. Apparently I didn't get everything with the power washer, or the power washer wouldn't blow everything out of the core, or out of the fins. So between being plugged outside and being plugged inside, yeah, she was struggling. And I already got the thermostat. I put the thermostat in it this weekend. And the new sending unit. And while I had that stuff off, I also flushed the block and got more shit out of it. So should be good to go. And also this weekend got I put new pins in the 3-point on this in the 1955, and then I got the new voltage regulator put on the 1955, and I didn't even have to do any adjusting or anything to it. I just stuck it on and it was already set where it needed to be. Took right off and worked. Yeah, shit, I bet I gotta go the other way. I bet I gotta put the top in first. I can't remember what I did to take it out. That's more like it. That's more better. Mo better. Come on, slide on there. Well, first I gotta get the hose clamp out of the way. Well, damn. There it goes. Okay. And had an interesting experience yesterday that's worth noting. I was driving into work yesterday morning and everything was going fine, nothing out of the ordinary, and coming up to a stoplight at an intersection I got across, and the light changes, so I hit the brakes, and it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, so I had only really been awake for 30 minutes, so I wasn't quite with it yet. So it took me a second after I hit the brakes to go, damn, there's quite a bit of travel in that pedal. And then it, another second later it hit me, I'm not slowing down. So luckily there was nobody. It was a 4-lane, but since it was 5 o'clock in the morning, there was nobody on it. And so there was nobody in front of me, and there was only one guy sitting at the intersection waiting to go, and he must have saw what was going on, and he didn't take off when the light turned. He waited, and I coasted through the intersection about 30 miles an hour with the brake pedal just on the floor, doing nothing. So I get through the intersection, and needless to say, I was wide awake at that point. That kind of experience will wake you up, no problem. And I let off the brake and hit it or tap it again, and they kind of came back. It's like, well, I ain't stopping now because I ain't gonna be late for work. So I kept on trucking and got to where got to just this side of White Pigeon where I turn off on a back road to go into work, so I don't got to go all the way down to 331 and go to turn off, start slowing down to turn off onto that road. Dang thing does it again. So this time I slam my truck in reverse because it's an automatic. So I slam it in reverse to use that as use it as an engine brake and slow down so I can turn. So dodged it twice, and like, alright, what the hell is going on? So I pull into work, and I was not late, by the way. So I pull into work and go clock in, and then come back out to my truck and pop the hood, and go or look at the brake reservoir, and sure as shit it's empty. It's like, oh great, this is just what I freaking needed. So I get my flashlight out of my glove box, crawl underneath the truck, start looking at the caliper, because the first thing I figured I'd check is, well, shit, I blew a caliper seal or something stupid. So I look at the calipers first, and they're both dry. So I crawl under the back and look across the truck to the passenger side, and on the back axle, and that backing plate's dry. And then I look around, and the driver's side backing plate on the rear axle was soaked. Like, oh, well, that makes me feel a little bit better about life. It's just a wheel cylinder. So I luckily ended up having to go into White Pigeon, the auto parts store anyway, to pick up a forklift part for work, or to order a forklift part for work. They didn't have it in stock. And so while I was there, I went ahead and went ahead and got a new brake or wheel cylinder for my truck. And then I drove it the 47 miles home on using the just the emergency brake. Come up to an intersection, tap on my brake pedal to turn my brake lights on, and then stomp on the e-brake. So made it home without incident and got it tore apart. Luckily, because I got the wheel off and took a flashlight and looked back at the brake line going into the cylinder, and it's pretty crusty, and I'm, well, damn it, I am, and first thought crosses my mind is, oh shit, this thing's gonna snap off, and I'm gonna have to put a new brake line on it. So I put a wrench on it and jiggle it a little bit, and sure as shit, the nut's turning, or the nut's twisting the tube, or the brake line. And it's like, well, before I just go ahead and twist it off, took a torch, or just took a little map torch, handheld map torch, and put some heat on the nut, and thank God that was enough to bust the rust loose, and the nut spun right out. So dodged another bullet there. Must have tweaked them things riding in the back of my truck. But so yeah, that was my interesting Monday experience. Luckily, it didn't do it on a day I had to come home and do anything for the farm because it was too windy to spray, and radiator wasn't done yet because I called when I got home and it was still in paint. So got that done and helped Dad tear apart a hydraulic cylinder for the front boom on a case backhoe. And after working on that thing, to tell you the truth, I'd have rather been doing the brakes on my truck, because that was a pain. But the kicker of the whole thing was, last weekend I just went through and redid the front brakes on my truck. I didn't think about the back brakes because I had redone those. It's got new shoes, springs, and brand new wheel cylinders. When Dad first gave me that truck when I turned 16, and once I got it fixed, I didn't drive it for 3 years. It just sat because I had a old Chevy 1500 with a V6 in it, and when I was in high school, the better gas mileage was a little bit smarter. But when I got into college, I wanted an actual real truck, not a two-wheel drive short bed cabin half V6. So I got plates and insurance on that 3/4 ton and started driving it. So I didn't think nothing of looking at the back brakes, and then a week later it blows the seal, or blows the wheel cylinder on me. So I think what I'll do is probably I only did the one wheel cylinder because that's all I felt like screwing with yesterday. I'll probably go through here sometime in the near future and put the other one on just to be on the safe side. But the brakes on that thing have always been mushy, even after it's got a new master cylinder on it and everything, because I didn't know what was causing the mushy brakes. And on those trucks, they have a Hall effect wheel speed sensor, and it's for the ABS, and it's only on the front because you can only do ABS on disc brakes, you can't do them on drum brakes. And if the tips of the sensors get any rust or dirt or shit on them, it's not that right, it's not the right size. And that's not a hex, I guess that's a screwdriver. But if the tips of those sensors get any rust or anything on them, they'll start throwing off a false reading, and they'll make the ABS start kicking in, and they'll give you a soft brake pedal. Well, those sensors are a pain in the dick to get to on those things because you got to pull the rotor off, and to get the rotor off involves pulling the hub off, and I'm not all about any of that. So while I was at it, I wanted to test a theory. So I pulled the fuse to disable my ABS, and oh my God, the brakes haven't been that good on that truck since I redid the brakes on it the first time 8 years ago. Yes, 7 years ago. 7 years ago. So from now on, I'm driving it around without ABS, which the ABS on only worked half the time anyway, and it always shows the most inconvenient time to decide to work, so no big loss. Oh, and the other thing I did to this thing was got rid of the starter weight and put our other suitcase weight bracket on it, because the stacks and slabs look cool on there, but are kind of highly impractical. They're not nearly as easy as just walk up, set your weight on there, throw some bolts in it, and away you go. Okay, that's tight. That's tight. Both hoses are tight. Should be good to go ahead and set the grill back on, I do believe. Alrighty, it's all back together. And it's full of coolant, so I left the side tin off so that I could check, or make it easier to look, make sure nothing's leaking. But all that's left to do now is pop it off. Tear that throttle at some point too. Still amazes me how good that thing runs after sitting as long as it did. See, it's hazy in there from that exhaust leak, though. Go ahead and pull it outside. Let it warm up till the thermostat pops, I guess. Well, it probably ran here for 15 minutes or so, and the temperature never came up, and the thermostat never opened, which tells me it's airlocked. But, and you probably can't hear it on the camera, but I can feel the, oh, there it went. It just burped. I can hear air bubbling up through the radiator, and that it just made a big old burp through here. And that hose is starting to get a little warmer, so I think the thermostat, it must have just got the air worked out, and the thermostat must have just opened. I can still feel it gurgling a little bit, so I'm just going to let that sit and let some of that air work its way out of the block. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to change this thing over to 1,000 RPM on the power takeoff. Or attempt to anyway. We're gonna see how jammed up the old system is. Because when Mike had this thing, all he ever did was chisel plow with it. He never did any power takeoff work. So right now the power takeoff won't shut off, but it's not turning at full RPM, so the clutch isn't engaged. So chances are the clutches are just sticky and or rusty from not being used. So since I'm going to use this thing to spread urea, and a fertilizer spreader doesn't have enough drag through the power takeoff system to keep that thing from spinning, I'm going to stick it on a stock chopper and go do some mowing with it. And if that thing doesn't work to rust loose off power takeoff on this thing, ain't nothing will. So I need one. Looks smaller than the one on my 55, but I could be wrong. Nope, it's the same size. This could get me into trouble. We're gonna find out. That's not the shaft. I know I brought that other 1,000 RPM shaft down here, or at least I thought I did. Maybe it is still sitting up on the bench. Huh, maybe it's up on the bench. Guess we'll go look up there. Okay, so this is the shaft that came with the tractor, which is a good deal because those things are not cheap to buy new, and good luck finding them used. All the used ones are still with the tractors that they're being used on. So we need to pop this here set screw loose, which actually, yeah, we'll pop it loose. Man, unfortunately this style's a little bit of a pain because of that snap ring. On the 55s I went to a 4-bolt circle that's real nice, but see if I can't get it out of there with these. Nope, those aren't gonna fit in there, dadgummit. Need big pair of pliers. That snap ring ain't nearly as snappy as I figured it'd be. It's actually, I'm not gonna say it's weak because I'm sure it was that way on purpose, but regular long needle nose pliers took it out just fine. Now, at least it's not stuck in the hole. I'll be damned. I'd have never in a million years figured it would have shifted gears that easy. What you gotta do is pull this out, and as you're pulling it out, you gotta wiggle it. And that'll get the gears lined back up so you can push this in, and then that shifts it into 1,000 RPM. Then you reset your set screw, which I am probably gonna have to take and clean up because that's awful dirty. Yeah, no, I'll clean it up later. So it's kind of like a deer, well, a little bit like a deer in the regard that you actually got a chain shaft, but I'll show you where it kicks deer's ass. So with a deer, you got to be quick change, because if you leave that power takeoff shaft out too long, you're going to drain your whole rear end. Well, on here, suction, you'll get a little bit of oil, but there's a seal in there, or an O-ring I should say, so that you don't have to be so quick on the draw. Now, those two shafts are different lengths, and the reason for that is so that you can't put the 540 shaft in and run 1000 RPM implements, and you can't put the 1000 RPM shaft in and run 540 implements. And if you look back in there, you can see that little peg. When you put this in, it pushes that peg back, which allows it to shift into 540. Where this one, that peg stays out. Now, the worst part about this is that it's suctiony. So that makes things a little difficult at times. But it also doesn't help that I need to clean this up. So clean that bearing, or clean the OD of that bearing out. She just slid right in, no problem. So yeah, this is where Oliver's idea was better than Deere's. However, IH, as much as I hate to admit it, still gets the credit. Theirs is the easiest. Both shafts are always there. All you gotta do is hook up to a different implement. I'm really surprised that was that easy. The first time when we got my 1955, it had the 540 RPM shaft in it. And the first time I went to shift it went in 1000 RPM fine, but switching it back to 540, it didn't want to go because that peg in the back was stuck. So it wasn't bad going into 1000. We're going to find out how bad it's going to be going into 540. After you do it one time and get everything loosened back up, it works fine, because I switch my 19 back and forth 2-3 times a year, and it just plug and chug. But rag. Normally you don't get that much oil out of it, but since that thing's probably never been changed, that's probably 30 years of buildup right there, and that's still all that came out of it. And I'll get the rest when I wash it. Okay, let's see what the radiator sounds like. Oh yeah. Okay. Take two. See if it does anything this time. Well, I let it sit here and idle in the driveway for a little longer, and it still didn't do nothing. But this time it had quit puking water out the overflow like it did the first time. So, like, well, screw it. I took it down the road, which is about down to the next dirt road here, which is about a half mile down, and got down there. It didn't do nothing, but I idled it down to make the turn, and apparently when I idled it down, it must have had one last bubble to choke up, and as soon as I made the turn and gunned it to come back up the road, the temperature came up, And I could tell right when the thermostat opened, because the temperature came up and then it went right back down to just above the first line in the normal box. So it's running a lot cooler than what it was before. So I don't know if it was the thermostat or if it was the radiator being plugged, but I think we got the issue solved. So I guess throw the rest of the tin back on it. We'll take it over, do some mowing, and put a load on it and see what happens. Well, so far so good. Ran cool all the way over here and didn't puke its guts out all over the road like it did before, so. Now we'll also put a load on it and see what happens. Fortunately, I don't want to be able to mow this whole thing. I'll also have to bring the 77 over here and finish it, but that's a little high, or a little low. Well, PTO works. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There's a possibility the head gasket in this thing took a shit, because it keeps overpressuring because I got back here to the house and noticed that there was still antifreeze running down like the side of the frame was wet. And so I got unhooked, got back here, tried popping the radiator cap, and the system was way overpressured. I couldn't even get the cap off with the tractor running. So I had to shut it off, got the pressure bled off, pulled the cap off, and started it back up, held my hand over the radiator to see if it was huffing, and it's not. So put the cap back on, let it sit there and idle. It started pissing antifreeze out the overflow. Reached up and grabbed onto the hose between the water pump and the top tank on the radiator. It was still cold, and the thing is, the antifreeze when it's coming out isn't hot. It's warm like you'd expect it to be, but it's not like it's boiling over. It's not hot. And I squeezed the radiator hose, and there was no pressure on it, and I let go of it, and I could feel a bunch of bubbles come through, and then all of a sudden thermostat opened. So what that's hinting towards is back here on the back of the block, there's 2 oil ports that cross over into the head, and there's 2 coolant ports that cross over into the head, all right in line with each other. That's the weak spot in the gasket. And what we're thinking is the gasket blew out between one of those 2 ports, or multiple ports. Because the other thing it's doing is it's blowing steam out the crankcase breather, and if you pull this, or if you pull the dipstick, it's blowing steam out the dipstick tube. So which means there's oil getting into, or there's water getting in the crankcase. But if it was an O-ring on one of the sleeves, it wouldn't be pressuring the coolant system, and it wouldn't be putting air in the coolant system. So it's almost got to be a head gasket. So I have to call Maybaugh in the morning and see what we can't do about finding one, or seeing if they still make their custom head gaskets. So I guess I'm going to be side dressing with the 1800 since the 1600 is down. So, and I'm thinking I'll figure out what I got to do to get parts for this thing, and then I'll park it over there, get the 1600 up here, because that's got to get, I want to get that going first, because that should hopefully be something stupid like a broken pin or something, throw it back together and she'll be ready to rock and roll. This could turn into a project, so as of right now we're on a standstill with it. Thought we had her licked, but fix one problem, find another. But that's what happens when you let a tractor sit for 15 years without doing it, and then you throw it in the field again without going over the motor. So I guess it could kind of be expected. It just kind of sucks. So anyway, I guess that does it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.